Welcome back to the Citizen channel. We're all staying safe and well. I continue to look at the history of Manchester City since 1880. Yes, we're up to the mid-70s, and today we're going to have a look specifically at season 1976-77. Yes, a very important season, of course. There's a personal angle on some of these as well. I'll give you some observations, of course. I'm well into my supporting City days and going to away games by this season, so sort of any personal observations I remember I will add to this. So we're going to have a look at what happened. Yes, no trophies this season, and of course it was the start of a bit of a glut of non-trophies, if you can have a glut of non-trophies, a drought if you will. So it was, but still, as ever, every season for City's interesting, whether we do anything or we don't do anything. Of course, we had a trophy in the cabinet and a place in Europe, and finished 8th the previous season. And as ever, this season promised a lot, so please join me as we make a determined bid for a first league title in 10 years and try to beat the best to conquer Europe. That didn't last long, that dream. So join me as we look back at 76-77 and let us know your views and memories, guys. Please, if you are new to the channel, push that subscribe button, push the bell notifications, everything City past like this, present, of course, all the new stuff, and future, as long as I can keep going as well. So there's lots of different things on the channel. Please enjoy. I do film and TV stuff as well, so if that's of any interest, have a look round, and or if you know somebody who might be interested in that who's not interested in City, how dare they be? But please point them in my direction, I'll be very grateful. Right, the big money signing, 76-77, was boyhood City fan and United legend, of course, Brian Kidd from Arsenal for £100,000. Lesser known was a certain Jimmy Conway, who, of course, passed away a couple of years ago as I'm recording this. He was bought for £30,000 from Fulham. He would initially fill a midfield spot, but his appearances would be a little bit patchy. Some injuries, but of course also not by Tony Book thought to be part of his best 11 at times. Season ticket sales would reach 20,000, a record for City, so a certain Mr. Swales was happy. We'll no doubt have more on him as well. We said, though, goodbye to one of our loyal servants, so still to this day, the player with most appearances ever for City, Alan Oakes. He signed for 3rd Division Chester for about £15,000. He thought at the time, at 34, he'd give some of the younger players a chance and that his time was up, although he did admit later that he made a bit of a mistake, and even though he enjoyed his time at Chester, he thought he might have held on a little bit longer at City and sort of carried on at the top level rather than drop a couple of divisions. But a great servant, of course. We had a new chief coach, I would imagine a brusque, straightforward talking Scot called Bill Taylor. He was the new chief coach. City sported a changing kit that didn't go down that well, actually. For the first time, we donned blue shorts to go with our tops and socks. It was not a popular move. I didn't like it. At the time, I think Coventry were always seen in blue shorts, so I just thought it was a bit too much putting us like them, and he wanted to be like Coventry City, not me, that was for sure. It was just so wrong, and I think most fans thought the same. And innovation, yes, we have had colour programmes and spot colour programmes over the years, but the first time City were determined to present a colour cover back and front on the match day programmes, and there was a couple inside done as well. But the programme I bought, the colours had bled slightly, so it wasn't the greatest images, but of course I have seen better versions, so obviously I was unlucky. Of course, these had been picked up at the printers or thrown back to the printer, and I unfortunately bought a dodgy one. So whether it's worth more money, I don't know. Well, let me know. But of course, mine wasn't great, and there'll be a couple of images on there, a bit blurred. There was of course, an image of Kiddo, which was just, you know, he could see it was Kiddo, but it was like one of those quiz things. Who's this blurred out? 3 draws from the first 4 league games. It was an okay start, but we fell at the first hurdle in defence of our League Cup on September the 1st, losing 3-0 at Villa Park to Aston Villa. We'd beaten Ron Saunders' Villa at Main Road in the league 2-0 the previous week. Of course, Ron Saunders had a brief tenure with us, didn't he? When City welcomed Juventus to Main Road, I was watching with a bunch of Italian waiters in Marotta, Italy, where I was on holiday at the time. Typical planning by me. They were all Torino fans who I think, were the champions at the time. I think Juventus had finished second to get into this competition, but they were impressed. I always remember being impressed by the kip acts on TV at night, because it always looked intimidating to me as a City fan. But they said, they were quite impressed with how that looked on the cameras. Of course, I'd returned to the UK when we played the second leg in Turin, of course, but hey, typical Burnley. Despite a 1-0 win at Main Road, we were dumped out of Europe with a 2-0 defeat in a very physical encounter over there. I don't think we got much protection from the referee. It wasn't on telly as such, so I remember listening to the radio on that one. My then big blue friend, who would be unknown to me then, be my future brother-in-law, had a week off to make his own way over to Torino. Of course, he went on the ferry and through France, but he lost his passport. So he ended up being, he told me he was in the Alps and he got picked up in the Alps, he met a few gangsters apparently, but apparently they kindly felt sorry for him. He ended up back in Paris, stranded, of course, with no passport. So we never got to see the game, but this lad had followed City home and away for all the games, Europe and at home, for many seasons. But that was an interesting story. The poor lad got lost in France. He was only an apprentice electrician. He was the same age as me, so he was only a teenager. City sat second, a point behind Liverpool before the visit of Tommy Docherty's United on the 25th of September. And despite a Chewett goal, we disappointingly lost this one 3-1. On the 5th of October, a 2-2 draw at Goodison put City joint top, but only briefly. But from the 23rd of October, which was a 1-0 loss to Ipswich, we always seem to lose at Ipswich, to an eventual defeat at Ashton Gate to Bristol City. This was my first trip to Ashton Gate, 1-0 on the 19th of February. We went unbeaten between those two dates, 17 games, including 3 winning FA Cup games. So we sort of cemented that top spot in the league, and we progressed nicely in the FA Cup. In the FA Cup, I enjoyed my first visit to a wintry Hawthorns on the 11th of January for a 1-0 win over West Bromwich Albion. Very snowy. A lot of games were being cancelled at that time. And then I did not enjoy totally my first trip to St James's Park, where crowd trouble beforehand and during the early part of the game caused, mainly by the police, putting Newcastle fans into a supposed segregated City section, caused fights, and dozens and up to a couple of hundred City fans ended up at the back of the stands, sadly me included, of course, while the fighting kicked off and police were wading in, only for the cops to come and tell us that they couldn't get us back in the ground, so they literally threw us out. Simple as that. So I ended up watching about 5 minutes of the game and just waited by the car for my friend's parents to come back. There's a piece in the Evening News which I'll probably put a copy up off there, a copy of it, of course, about the horrific day. Of course, I never got any money back for that, but it was just shocking. It was awful. So it ended 3-1 to City, of course, which sort of made it a little bit better for me. But of course, the Newcastle fans after the game, you could just went on a rampage, smashing up their own game. They couldn't find any City fans to have a go at. They were smashing up their own gaff. But this is the 70s. Newcastle, they did have, of course, the ground closed at times in those days, but it wasn't very pleasant. But I escaped unscathed, but a little bit pissed off, though the fact that we actually won, it did temper my misery just a little bit. I was just glad to get away alive, in fairness. The trip to Leeds for the fifth round, well, that was as lively as ever, off the pitch, but at least I got to watch all of this one. But at least a last minute goal by Trevor Cherry ended our FA Cup run, and all we had left was the league. In late November, Colin Bell was in Manchester Royal Hospital having another operation to hopefully provide a breakthrough to fitness. He stated at the time, "I will be back," and I thought that was Arnie, but of course we know he obviously got it from Colin. As far as the league, there was a classic encounter with Liverpool on the 29th of December. An icy Main Road, seemingly holding on for a 1-0 victory, a hard-fought victory, a royal goal. Dave Watson, inexplicably, in the 88th minute, headed the ball past Corrigan on the icy pitch. He just couldn't quite control himself. To say we were shocked at the time, watching in the Kippax was an understatement. We shared the points, missing the chance then to go level on points with Liverpool. Kiddo had made a sluggish start to his goal scoring at City. His debut goal came at the end of October, but once he started, he quickly totted up the goals. City played only one league game in January and a 5-0 win over Leicester. On the 22nd of January, he scored 4. Mike Doyle getting the other as City went 3 points behind Liverpool top with 3 games in hand, so it looked all right. 2 points for a win, don't forget, in those days, and we were level with Ipswich in second, although we'd played a game more than them. By the 5th of March, United were just out of the top 3, but again they beat us at Old Trafford 3-1. Yeah, horrible day again. We went there with some confidence still in the 70s. It was disappointing, and that put a dent in our title push. And when the Tractor Boys, Ipswich, visited Main Road on the 2nd of April 1977, they were actually top on goal difference from Liverpool. City with a game in hand on both, and we beat Ipswich 2-1 to keep up the pressure. But we missed a big chance a week later, 3 points behind the Scousers. A trip to Anfield was the chance to close that gap, but despite Kiddo getting on the score sheet, they won that one 2-1, putting them 5 points ahead, having played a game more. Despite City winning our next 3, Liverpool kept their noses in front and disaster for City at the end of April when struggling Derby County put 4 past us with no reply. That was a horrible day. By the time we thrashed Spurs at Main Road on the 7th of May 5-0, all seemed lost 3 days later, and again at home we could only manage a draw with Everton in our last home game, 1-1, but at least Europe was secured for next season in UEFA Cup. Our final game was a great win at Coventry through a Jimmy Conway goal on the 14th of May. After the game, it was confirmed that Liverpool had defended their crown successfully, drawing 0-0 the same day. Those at Highfield Road, me included, had been told. There's no internet in those days, don't forget, so we had to round people with transistor radios and stuff like this. Had been told that Liverpool had been beaten, so there was still a glimmer of hope. I didn't have an argument, but I remember mentioning this 2 or 3 years ago on social media and said it was all over by then, but I distinctly remember being in Highfield Road and being happy because we'd been told Liverpool were beaten, so we still had a chance. We still had a chance at the title, but of course I was told that it'd already been won. But that's my memories, of course, that we still hadn't a chance. But of course Liverpool still had a game to play. But of course that draw had guaranteed the league title for them anyway. With the title confirmed, they actually lost the last game, they had game in hand, but of course it didn't matter by then. We'd come so close and believed for so long, but Liverpool had again used their experience to lift the title once more. Ironically, Dave Watson blamed himself. That own goal was the difference between second spot and a title. I've even seen it said by City fans. Silly, really. A lot of things happened. A lot of water went under the bridge after that game, of course. And Liverpool, and after that Liverpool game, and of course Dennis Stewart was a bit more pragmatic at the end of the season. He said we just weren't good enough. Of course, a big miss was Colin Bell. A fit Bell may have been the difference that season, but it was not to be. We'll not get this close, and we wouldn't get this close again for a very long time. There were pluses as well as Europe off the pitch. For the first time since the 1940s, we'd average a crowd over 40,058. Only Liverpool United had a higher crowd average. Kiddo was the top scorer, 26 goals in 44 games, all competitions. Stewart managed 18 in 43 games. Joe Corrigan and Willie Donachie started all 49 competitive games that season. Dave Watson was never in danger of not being forgiven for that own goal against Liverpool. He lifted the Supporters Player of the Year award, I think by some margin as well. To sum up this look back at season 76-77, in part 2 I'll take a more detailed look at the season through the summing up of Chairman Peter Swales and Manager Tony Buck, which obviously was put in the Everton programme for the 10th of May 1977. I think it's worth putting an episode out for this, just to and my little views as well on what was said. It makes an interesting snapshot of the City mindset at the time, and of course a lot of us supporters would have clung on to what we're being told by certain people like Swales and Tony Buck. So we'll have a look at that in part 2. Hope you enjoyed this part 1, guys. Let us know any memories you've got. It'd be great to hear from you, and join me for part 2. Till we meet again, that's one thing, don't I? Please stay safe, Blues. Come on, City. Bye for now.